Om Vishwandarpana Drishyamana Nagari Tulyannijantargatam Pashyannatmani Mayaya Bahirivod Bhutan Yatha Nidraya Yasakshat Kurute Prabodha Samaye Swatmanamevadvayam Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Nama Idam Shri Dakshina Murtaye नारायणं पद्मभुवं वसिष्ठं शक्तिं च तत्पुत्रपराशरं च व्यासं शुकं गौडपदं महान्तं गोविन्दयोगीन्द्रमथास्य शिष्यं श्रीशङ्कराचार्यमथास्य पद्मपादं च हस्तामलकं च शिष्यं तन्तोटकं वार्तिककारमन्यान् अस्मद्गुरून् सन्ततमानतोऽस्मि श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः परब्रह्मनिष्ठं स्वतो धर्मनिष्ठम् अहिंसैकनिष्ठं स्वशिष्यैः सुजुष्टं यतीनां वरिष्ठं गुरूणां गरिष्ठं दयानन्दरूपं मदाचार्यमीडे नमः श्रीपरमार्थाय संसाराध्यासनाशिने श्रोत्रियब्रह्मनिष्ठाय तस्मै ब्रह्मविदे नमः सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् ॐ वासुदेवेन्द्रयोगीन्द्रं नत्वा ज्ञानप्रदं गुरुं मुमुक्षूणां हितार्थाय तत्त्वबोधोऽभिधीयते. I welcome you all to the 49th class of the Fundamentals of Vedanta series. The Tattva Bodha gave out the essence of Vedanta in the Sutra Vakyam Atma Satyam Tadanyat Sarvam Mithyeti. And this is the final vision that I have to come to. An understanding, a clear understanding of the message of this statement itself is moksha. What Tattva Bodha is telling me is that I belong to a higher order of reality, and everything else is in a lower order of reality. I am Satyam, and all else is Mithya. So, given this difference in the order of reality, going by the principle that Satyam can never be affected by Mithya, the coming and going of names and forms can never affect the content. Going by this message, I understand that who I really am never affected by the coming and going of anything else. And this is not the case that I have to become Satyam. I am already that Satyam. This is the message that Tattva Bodha is trying to give me. So I don't have to gain this moksha. This moksha is my own nature, being Satyam. And therefore, all that is required is to understand clearly, doubtlessly, that I am this Satyam. So this message has to be received and then assimilated. This is the process of Vedantic study. So now the question is, how does Vedanta teach this? Because I have to understand that I, the Atma, who I really am, is the Satyam of this entire Jagat. I am the Satyam behind this entire Jagat, just as gold is the Satyam behind all the ornaments. So, this vision has to be communicated. And how does Vedanta teach this? This is what we saw in the last class. How does the jeweler teach his son that all that is there is gold? All that is there in the shop is gold alone. So he does it in a three-step process. So initially, his son is only seeing the necklace and the bangle and the ring and all these varieties of ornaments. The gold is not there in his vision at all. So the first step that the jeweler does is he teaches his son that there is something called gold. That is not the necklace, that is not the bangle, that is not the ring. That is the shiny yellow, smooth metal underlying all these ornaments. So the son is now able to appreciate, okay, I see what you're saying. So in his vision now, there are ornaments and then there is also the gold. The gold is also there in his vision. Earlier, the gold was not there. You're just seeing the ornaments. Now the ornaments are there. The gold is also there. Then the second step is that he points out that this gold is the cause and the ornaments are the effect. Karya Karana Prakriya. So he takes him to the shop. He puts in a gold on the anvil. The jeweler works on it, and out comes an ornament. In goes the gold, out comes the ornament. Gold is the cause, the ornaments are the effect. So now he appreciates that there is some cause effect relationship between these two. The gold is also there, the ornaments are there. It is still Dvaitam. There is a cause effect relationship between these. So this is still Dvaitam. Now he has to come to the crucial third step where he points out that there are no ornaments other than the gold. In fact, gold alone exists. There is a difference in the order of reality between the ornaments and the gold. Gold is in a higher order of reality. It is utterly unaffected by the coming and going of ornaments. So, this is the crucial third step where he appreciates that there is only the gold. There are no ornaments other than the gold. This is Advaitam. So similarly, we come to Vedanta based on this example, and Vedanta has to do a similar process to make me appreciate that I, the Atma alone, am the reality here. So what is the first step? The first step, this person is seeing only the anatmas everywhere. He sees the body, the mind, he sees so many objects in the world. He sees only this plurality. Then the teacher tells him first that there is something called Atma that you have to understand. The Atma is not this Shariratrayam, the Atma is not this Kosha Panchakam, the Atma is not this Avasthatrayam. Not this, not this, not this. And you see this Satchidananda Swarupa, that is the Atma. So in his vision now, there is this ornament, there is all this anatma, and there is also this atma. So at this point, we are still in Dvaitam, first step. And many of these philosophies and many of the spiritual systems, they stop at this level. They understand there is matter and consciousness, and then they stop at this level. Somehow I have to now experience this consciousness separate from the matter. So Sankhya and Yoga get into this kind of a practice where I have to eliminate all the thoughts of Dvaitam in order to experience this pure consciousness. So there, the reason they have to do that is because in their understanding, both the Atma and the Anatma are in the same order of reality. They have to melt all the ornaments in order to see the gold. Whereas Vedanta goes further. Vedanta says you have not really understood the message that I am trying to give you. You don't need to melt all these ornaments in order to see the gold. You have to go to the second and third steps. And what are they? So, here in the second step, he points out the cause effect relationship between the Atma and the Anatma. Atma is the cause, the entire world is an effect. This also is still in Dvaitam because there is Atma, there is Anatma, cause and effect. Then in the third step, he points out that just as there is only the gold, there is no ornament separate from the gold. Similarly, there is no world separate from you, really speaking. You alone really exist. The world is in a lower order of reality. You belong to a higher order of reality. So, this is Advaitam. So I have to understand that this Atma that is behind this body mind complex is Sarvatma. The Atma behind this entire Jagat, this Atma behind this body mind complex is one with the Paramatma, the Atma behind the entire Jagat. So this Sarvatma Bhava has to come. And therefore, for this to happen, we have to come to the Mahavakya Vichara, Tat Tvam Asi. There is this Karya Karana Prakriya that is done as a part of the Mahavakya Vichara. Tat Tvam Asi. These three words convey the entire message of Advaita Vedanta. The entire sadhana is to understand and assimilate this message. So the Tatpada refers to Ishvara, Paramatma. The Tvampada refers to the Jivatma, the individual. And what this is pointing out is an identity between the two. So we already started the Tvampada Vichara and we also concluded the Tvampada Vichara in Tattva Bodha with Atma Kaha. With that we started the Tvampada Vichara. So now we have entered the Tattpada Vichara. What is the nature of this totality? Ishvara. What is the nature of Ishvara? What is the nature of this macrocosm? We looked at the Jivatma, the microcosm, the individual. Now we are looking at the nature of the totality, Paramatma, macrocosm, the total. So now the question is, how did this world originate? And that is where Tattva Bodha started with Atha. Atha Chaturvimshati Tattvotpatti Prakaram Vakshyamaha. So Tattva Bodha says, I am going to teach you how the origination of this world came about. Jagatotpatti Prakaram Prapanchotpatti Prakaram Vakshyamaha. So as we said, science has not been able to explain in any convincing way how all this came about. The Big Bang spewed out all the matter. Before the Big Bang, there was no time and no space. It spewed out all of this matter. And then what caused the Big Bang? What was behind the Big Bang? Science has no answers. They call it the singularity, as we discussed, where all the laws of science break down. There are no good answers. And then subsequently, science has no answers at all, clueless about how consciousness came about from matter. We call it the hard problem of consciousness. So science is stuck between the singularity and a hard problem of consciousness. Like one is stuck between a rock and a hard place, as they say. You can't move this. You can't make any breakthrough here. You can't make any breakthrough here. Both sides you're stuck. You're wedged in between, wondering what to do. Vedanta says that science is obsessed with the observed. And because science is obsessed with the observed, and it cannot do anything else but be obsessed with the observed. Because the entire science is based on observation, hypothesis, etc. The first step is observation. The observer can never be the observed, and therefore consciousness can never be observed, can never be experimented with. Therefore, Vedanta says science will forever remain clueless in this area which concerns consciousness. Vedanta says that before this world came into existence, there were two factors. Brahmashraya Sattva Rajas Tamo Gunatmika Maya Asti. There were these two factors, Brahman and Maya. And we looked into the meaning of the word Brahman. Brahman means big. And when big is not qualified, then it becomes limitlessly big, which means limitless. So Brahman is limitless. It is free of the limitations of space, time, and objects. Brahman being all pervading, there is no place where it is not there. Brahman being Trikalepi Tishtati, being there in all the three periods of time, even before the beginning of the world. There is no time when Brahman is not there. And similarly, Brahman being the Satyam of the entire Jagat, there is no object where Brahman is not. So Brahman is not limited by space, time, or any object in this world. And we said that Brahman is just another name for this Atma. The Atma that is behind this individual. We said the Atma is Satyam. Vikalepi tishtati. This Atma is there in all the three periods of time. So the same Atma that is behind the individual is there at the beginning of creation also. But in the context of creation, the same Atma is called Brahman. As we said, the Upanishads freely interchange the words Atma and Brahman. They use the words interchangeably. It is just another name for Atma, just as we discussed this room space. A space enclosed within these walls of the room. When the walls of the room are demolished, the space continues to exist, unchanged. So similarly, Atma is this consciousness that is so, in a manner of saying, enclosed within the walls of the body and the mind. And the walls of the body and the mind are not there at the beginning of creation. The same Atma exists as Brahman, just named Brahman. And this Brahman is of the nature of consciousness. So Vedanta doesn't have to explain the origination of consciousness because consciousness never originated. Consciousness is primary in Vedanta. Before the beginning of creation, consciousness was there as Brahman. And as we have said, consciousness is necessarily attributeless because drigdrishyau dvau padarthau staha paraspara vilakshanau drig brahma drishyam mayeti. The observer and the observed, the knower and the known, the witness and the witnessed. They are always different. Drig and Drishyam are different. And the attributes that are known belong to the known, never to the knower. So if something is addressable as this is known, there is always this accompanying it. There's the this and the I. The attributes of the this belong to the this, never to the I, never to the observer. And therefore, consciousness is necessarily attributeless. Any attribute belongs to the known, never to the knower. And being attributeless, it is necessarily changeless because all change belongs to the attributed, never to the attributeless. All change that we can talk about is only in terms of changes in attributes. Like we discussed, this green mango becomes a yellow mango. Why are we able to talk about the change? Because of the change in color. That's an attribute of the mango. But then Brahman is attributeless. What change can we talk about here? Therefore, it is necessarily changeless. Therefore, the attributeless, changeless Brahman is there. Now, Vedanta has to explain how this plurality came about, how this diversity came about, because the changeless cannot produce any diversity. That is why Vedanta points out there is another principle that is also there. Brahmashraya sattva rajas tamo gunatmika maya asti. So Brahm Vedanta introduces the second principle called Maya. And what is Maya? Maya is the entire plurality, this entire world that is in an unmanifest form. Just as the entire tree that is about to come out is unmanifest in a seed, the entire movie that is about to come out is unmanifest in the DVD. The entire dream that is about to emerge is unmanifest in the waker's mind. Without the seed, without the unmanifest tree in the seed, there is no tree that can emerge. If we try to plant a stone in which the tree is not there in an unmanifest form, we can never get a tree. If we try to insert something else other than the DVD into the slot, we can never get a movie. Similarly, there can be no dream without it being unmanifest in the waker's mind. Similarly, Vedanta says there can be no creation without this unmanifest Maya being there. So these two principles are there, Brahman and Maya. Now there is a certain similarity between this macrocosm and the microcosm. If you look at the individual, we discussed the individual is a mixture of Atma and Anatma. A mix of consciousness and matter. So similarly, the total is also a mix of this Brahman, which is of the nature of consciousness, and Maya, which is this primordial matter. Primordial unmanifest matter. So primordial consciousness plus primordial unmanifest matter. And as we said, the consciousness at the level of the individual is called Atma. The same consciousness, when it comes to the total, is renamed as Brahman. Now we will look at the Anatma aspect of the individual. We look at the causal Anatma aspect of the individual. Then we called it the Karana Sharira or the causal body. The Karana Sharira or the causal body or equivalently Avidya. As we said, Anirvachya Anadya Vidya Rupam Sharira Dvayasya Karanamatram Satswarupa Jnanam Nirvikalpaka Rupam Yadasti Tat Karana Shariram. So Karana Sharira is Anadi Avidya Rupam. It is of the nature of Avidya. We equated this self-ignorance and the Karana Shariram. So this Karana Shariram is there, that is the primordial material aspect of the individual, from which emerge the Sukshma and the Sthula Shariras. Similarly, on the total side, we are calling this primordial material aspect Maya. Or equivalently, it is called the Karana Prapancha. Karana Prapancha means the entire world in an unmanifest form. So there is this similarities between the individual and the total. One difference though is that we are studying this in the opposite order. In case of the individual, we started with the Stula Sharira and then we came to the Sukshma Sharira and then we came to the Karana Sharira. Whereas with regards to the total, we are starting with the Karana Prapancha or Maya. And then we explain how this world originated. So these two factors, Maya as well as Brahman, both are beginningless. There never was a time when Brahman was not there. There never was a time when Maya also was not there. And this is the reason why we talk about these endless cycles of creation and dissolution. If we ask about when these cycles of creation and dissolution began, when did the first creation happen? We say there was never a first creation. Therefore, Brahman and Maya are both beginningless. Now, here the author uses two adjectives for Maya, and both are significant adjectives that are important to understand. The first is Brahmashraya. Brahmashraya Sattva Tamo Gunatmika Maya Asti. So, first is Brahmashraya. What does Brahmashraya mean? Means that Maya is Mithya. It has no independent existence. It depends upon Brahman for its existence. Brahmashraya Maya. And as we have said, that one Satyam plus any number of Mithya Vastus is still one Satyam alone. One gold plus any number of ornaments is still one gold. Similarly, one Brahman plus Maya, which is Mithya, is still one Brahman. This is not a parallel reality. Therefore, we cannot talk about this being two things in some ways. This Maya cannot exist separately from Brahman. Maya depends upon Brahman for its existence. Maya is also presented as a power, a Shakti. That's why it's also called Shakti. And this power can never exist separately from this powerful. Like Swamiji gives this example that if this power could exist separately from the powerful, then let's say there is a speaker who has to speak on a certain topic. The speaker could send the power of speaking separately and place that in front of the audience, and the speaker needn't come at all. Or the audience has got this power of listening, and if they could separate the power from the powerful, the audience could just send their power of listening and they need not attend at all. So you just have the power of speaking and the power of listening interacting with each other, which makes no sense. Therefore, Maya is also the Shakti of Brahman, and therefore it cannot exist separately from Brahman. So now we have to take an important law. We have to understand an important law here. And that law says, Karana Gunaha Karyeshu Anuvartante. Karana Gunaha Karyeshu Anuvartante. What this means is that the attributes of the cause always carry over to the effect. They inhere in the effect also. For example, if the parents are human, the children are also human. The humanness carries over from the parents to the children. Similarly, the color of the eyes or the color of the skin, or the parents are heavy or tall, those kinds of characteristics tend to get carried over to the children also. So the attributes of the cause get carried over to the effect. So now we are talking about this Maya is the one that evolves into this world. The unmanifest world becomes manifest. So we say that whatever are the fundamental characteristics of the cause, they get carried over to the effect. Therefore, Maya being Mithya, it can only produce a Mithya world. Therefore, this world is also Mithya. The world is also dependent upon Brahman for its existence. So, this is the first adjective, Brahmashraya Maya. And the second adjective is Sattva Rajas Tamo Gunatmika. Sattva, Rajas, Tamo, Gunatmika. So here we apply this Karana Gunaha, Karyeshu Anuvartante law in the opposite order. That if we see certain effects, attributes in the effects, then we infer that those attributes must be present in the cause also. For example, when you see the children, you can imagine what their parents look like. So here, if we examine the world, then we see that there are inert things in the world, like this desk or this wall, or so many inert things are there around us. So this is one attribute, this inertness. And then the other is we see sentient beings in the world who have this power to know and the power to act. If we take our entire day, for example, we are purely knowing and responding, knowing and responding. This is what our entire day looks like. We gain knowledge of the things around us and we respond. So there is the power to know and the power to act. And when we are tired of this knowing and responding, then once we are tired, we go to sleep. So this resting faculty is also within us. So therefore, we say that Sattva, Rajas, Tamo, Gunatmika, Maya. So Maya also has this attribute of resting, and this power of knowledge, this power of action. All of those are there in Maya also. We can say that when the human being rests once in a while, but these inert objects outside, they are permanently at rest. And therefore, there are these three attributes in Maya. That is Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. We have discussed this before, that Sattva Guna corresponds to this faculty of knowledge, this power to know, Jnana Shakti. So that Guna is there in Maya. Similarly, this Rajoguna is the faculty of action, this power to act. Kriya Shakti, this power is also there, this guna is also there in Maya, in an unmanifest form. And then there is all these inert objects, and even the sentient beings go to rest. And this is because of Tamo Guna or Dravya Shakti. So these three gunas are there in Maya. Therefore, it's also called Trigunatmika Maya. Trigunatmika Maya. Sattva, Rajas, Tamo, Gunatmika, Maya, Asti. So the entire world requires this Dravya Shakti, which comes from this Tamo Guna, which is this resting ability. And the sentient beings, they require Jnana Shakti and the Kriya Shakti, the power to know and the power to act that comes from the Sattva Guna and the Rajo Guna of Maya. So these are the two adjectives of Maya that are presented here. Brahmashraya and Sattva Rajas Tamo Gunatmika. So now what was the situation like before creation? How can we imagine this situation? What was it like? Vedanta says that we encounter it every day in our life when we go to sleep. The situation was very similar to our own deep sleep that we experience every day. So in deep sleep is nothing there. You say nothing is experienced, but the experiencer of the nothingness is there. The consciousness is still there. And this entire dream world that is yet to emerge is in an unmanifest state in this sleeping individual. The entire dream world to emerge is in an unmanifest state. So now a dream world emerges. Why does it emerge? Because of the pressure of certain vasanas in the mind. So similarly, Vedanta points out that the consciousness is there called Brahman. And this unmanifest world that is yet to emerge is there in the form of Maya. Then what causes this manifestation? Like this dream manifestation is caused due to the pressure of vasanas in the mind. What causes this manifestation of this entire Jagat? Vedanta says it's because of karma. That the jivas have to be given the results of their punya and papa. They have to experience the results of their punya and papa. And for that, they, they have to have this sukshma and sthula sharira. As we saw, the Sukshma Sharira and the Sthula Sharira are called Sukha Dukkhadi Bhoga Sadhanam and Sukha Dukkhadi Bhogayatanam. It is the means and the platform where the Sukha and Dukkha are experienced. So this Sukshma Sharira has to come, this Sthula Sharira has to come. But what will this Sukshma and Sthula Sharira do without a Jagat? Because without a Jagat, without any interaction, there can be no Sukha and Dukkha. Therefore, the Jagat and the various lokas have to come. The entire Sthula, Sukshma Sharira and this Jagat are there in an unmanifest form in Maya. And due to karma, this entire manifestation happens. And we say that this is also a gradual development, it is not something sudden. Just as from the seed which contains the unmanifest tree, the tree doesn't come out suddenly. First, there's a sprout that comes out, and then there is a tree that comes out subsequently. So, similarly, from this Karana Prapancha, the entire Sthula Jagat doesn't come about. There is a certain process of evolution. The Karana, first, from the Karana, the Sukshma emerges. And then from the Sukshma, the Sthula emerges. And this is true both at the level of the individual as well as at the level of the total. So Maya is changing, as we saw. Maya is unmanifest and then becomes manifest. The unmanifest world is called Maya. Manifest Maya is called the world. Maya is changing. On the other hand, we said Brahman is attributeless, it is changeless. Maya is Saguna, Sattva Rajas Tamo Gunatmika. It is attributed. Brahman is attributeless. So the entire manifestation emerges from this mixture of Maya and Brahman. Maya alone cannot produce this manifestation because Maya alone cannot even exist by itself. And Brahman alone cannot produce this manifestation because Brahman is attributeless and changeless. And therefore, it is the coming together of the Brahman and Maya that is responsible for this manifestation that is called Prakriti and Purusha. Coming together produce this manifestation. And this is presented symbolically as the Ardhanarishwara also in the Puranas, etc. So, Brahman being changeless doesn't evolve, doesn't change. Brahman only lends its existence and consciousness to Maya. Brahman is consciousness and existence. So Maya doesn't have its own existence. It borrows existence from Brahman. Maya being inert, primordial material, doesn't have its own consciousness. It also borrows this consciousness from Brahman. So Brahman doesn't undergo any change at all. But it is a cause. It is the cause. It is a changeless cause. It is called the Vivarta Upadana Karanam. Vivarta Upadana Karanam. Meaning the changeless material cause of this entire Jagat. So what's an example in our life where there is a Vivarta Upadana Karanam? Because all the causes that we know seem to change. What's an example of a changeless cause? So we give the example of the rope snake. The rope is the cause of the snake. Because without the rope, the snake cannot exist. The length of the snake is the length of the rope. But then the rope doesn't undergo any change in the production of the snake. The rope is still unchanged. The rope remains the rope, but still the snake appears. So this is an example of Vivarta Upadana Karanam. Brahman is called Vivarta Upadana Karanam. It is the changeless material cause. And as we said, it is Maya that evolves into this world. The Maya is the changing one. Therefore, Maya is called Parinami Upadana Karanam. It is the changing material cause. And what is an example of a changing cause in our daily lives? Milk getting transformed to curd. That's an example where the milk has changed into curd. Now you cannot go back to the original state of the milk. Its attributes have changed. Similarly, Maya evolves into this Jagat. It undergoes all kinds of changes in the production of this Jagat, but Brahman remains there, changeless as the Vivarta Upadana Karanam, lending just existence and consciousness. So the one Brahman as though becomes many. The one Brahman remains one throughout this process. There is no change in Brahman at all. Even now, Brahman is there unchanged. But one Brahman as though becomes many, just as one gold as though becomes many ornaments. So the evolution is presented in 4 stages. One is this Sukshma Bhuta Shrishtihi. We call it the Sukshma Bhuta Shrishtihi, where we explain how from Brahman, backed by Maya, how the 5 Sukshma elements emerge. Akashaha, Vayuhu, Agnihi, Jalam, and Prithvi. How these Sukshma elements emerge from Brahman, backed by Maya. This is the first stage, Sukshma Bhuta Shrishtihi. Then the second stage is Sukshma Bhautika Shrishtihi. That how these Sukshma Shariras then emerge from these Sukshma Bhutas. Well, we have said Apanchikata Panchamahabhutaih Kritam Satkarmajanyam Sukha Dukhadi Bhoga Sadhanam. This is the Sukshma Shariram. Apanchikata Panchamahabhutaih Kritam is made of these Sukshma Bhutas. So how did these Sukshma Shariras emerge from these Sukshma Bhutas? Like we said at the beginning of Srishti, all the Sukshma Shariras, all the Jivatmas are created. The Karana Shariras are never created, but from the Karana Shariras, the Sukshma Sharira emerges at the beginning of Srishti. So this is Sukshma Bhautika Srishti. Then the third stage is the Sthula Bhuta Srishti, which means how did these gross elements, Panchikrita Panchamaha Bhutas, which make up this gross body as well as the entire Jagat, the inert materials in the Jagat, how did these gross 5 elements emerge? That is the third stage, Sthula Bhuta Srishti. And then the fourth stage is the Sthula Bhautika Srishti. How did these bodies and this entire Jagat emerge from these Sthula Bhutas? So this is what Tattva Bodha talks about now. So we will read that portion and we will continue from there. So this is on page 12 of that PDF, latest PDF that I had sent. And right at the beginning of page 12. And I will read this, and Padmaji, Balaji, you can repeat after me. Tatah akashah sambhutah
आकाशसम्भूतः
akashad vayuh
आकाशाद्वायुः
vayostejah
वायोस्तेजः
tejasa apah
तेजस आपः
adbhyah prithvi
Abhyah Prithivihi.
Adbhyah Prithvi.
Abhyah Prithivi.
So Tataha Akasha Sambhutaha. So Tataha means from Brahman. In fact, this section is taken from Taittiriya Upanishad, which talks about a similar process of evolution of the Panchabhutas from Brahman. Tasmadva etasmad atmanah akasha sambhutah. This is what Taittiriya Upanishad says. There it says, Tasmatva etasmad atmanah. So there it uses the word Atma. From that Brahman, which is the same as this Atma, it says. Akasha Sambhutah, Akasha evolved. So when we talk about the evolution of space, it is not just the evolution of space, but of time also. Just as in our dream, the moment that the dream space is projected, dream time is also projected. Maya Kalpita Deshakala Kalana Vaichitre Chitrikritam, says the Dakshinamurti Stotram. Maya Kalpita Deshakala Kalana, Maya Kalpita Deshakala. So from Maya, this Desha, time and space emerge. Deshakala, space and time. So this Akasha that emerges is the subtlest of the Panchabhutas. And we say it is the subtlest because it is recognized only by one sense organ, which is the organ of hearing. In fact, the organ of hearing is connected to the space because even within the organ of hearing, the space is there. That is the reason why we are able to hear. If we block this, right, then we go to a doctor saying, I'm not able to hear anything. The Shrotrendriyam and the space are connected. So this enclosed space is the Shrotrendriyam. So this connection between the Shrotrendriyam and space is there. Therefore, we say space has got this one attribute of Shabda, the sound. So Akasha, as we said, is purely an evolute of Maya. By Maya being Mithya, Akasha is also Mithya. It is purely Namarupa. The existence of Akasha belongs to Brahman only. So then is the next one, Akashad Vayuhu. So from Akasha says that Vayuhu emerges. So here again, we have to note two things. One is we are talking about the creation of the Sukshma Panchabhutas, creation of the five subtle elements. And therefore, this is subtle to subtle. From subtle Akashaha, from Brahman, subtle Akashaha emerges. From subtle Akashaha, this element called subtle Vayu emerges. And why is there this sequence? Because we are talking about the progression from the subtle to the grosser one. Vayu is now recognized by two of our sense organs. Because we can hear Vayu. When Vayu moves, it makes this whistling sound. And then we can also feel Vayu on our skin. Therefore, it has got the attributes of Shabdaha and Sparshaha. From Brahman, Akasha, from Akasha, Vayu emerges. And then from Vayuhu, Vayos Tejaha, it says, from Vayuhu emerges Agnihi. Again, there is this progression. Agnihi is now recognized by three attributes. We can hear Agnihi. Fire makes a distinct crackling sound. We can touch. Unmistakably, we can recognize we are touching something very hot. And then third is we can also see Agnihi. Agnihi has got a form. It is the first element with a form. And therefore, Ishvaraha has to be invoked in a form. Then this is the first form that we can invoke Ishvara in. Because Akashaha doesn't have a form, Vayuhu doesn't have the form, Agnihi is the first element with a form, and therefore if we have to have a formful Ishvara, the most primitive version of formful Ishvara that we can come to is Agnihi. And that is why the Vedas have so much importance on Agni worship. Then we come to the fourth element, Tejasa Apaha. So from this Agni, from this subtle Agni, the waters emerge. Because the water has got four attributes, we can hear it flowing. Shabda is there, we can touch it. This distinct cool touch is there for water. Shabda Sparshaha, water has got its form, Rupa is there. And water has got its distinct taste. The taste of water is in fact the standard based on which we can recognize the other tastes like sweetness, bitterness, sourness, etc. All of these have a basis. What is the basis? We say it is the taste of water. Then the last element here, the last subtle element is Adhyaf Prithvi. So from the waters, this earth element emerged because it has five attributes. Just we can hear the any solid object falling, shabdaha. We can touch a solid object, sparshaha. It has got a form, rupaha. We can even taste it. And we can also smell it. In fact, the smell is the new attribute that comes along with Prithvi. That's why it's called Gandhavati Prithvi. When these rains come for the first time, we can smell the distinct smell of earth at that time. So here too, the rule is very visible. That Akashaha is the cause. It has one attribute, Shabdaha. Vayuhu is the effect. So the Shabdaha gets carried over to Vayuhu. Vayuhu adds its own attribute, Sparshaha. Then Vayuhu is the cause and Agni is the effect. Vayu, Vayos Tejaha. Vayu is the cause, Agni is the effect. In Vayu, we have Shabdaha and Sparshaha. They get carried over to Agni, and Agni adds its own attribute of Rupa. And then from Agni, subtle Agni, emerged the subtle Jalam, and therefore the three attributes of Agni get carried over to the Jalam. Jalam adds its own taste attribute. And in Jalam, there are four attributes. The four attributes get carried over to Prithvi, and Prithvi adds its own smell attribute. So now we talked about how these elements have their distinct attributes. Each of them has a distinct attribute. Akashaha has Shabdaha, then Vayuhu, Akashaha Vayuhu has its distinct attribute of touch. Agnihi has its distinct attribute of form. And then Jalam has its distinct attribute of taste. And then Prithvi has its distinct attribute of smell. And then again, Karanagunaha Karyeshu Anuvartante, the causes attributes get carried over to the effects since they are all born out of Sattva, Rajas, Tamo Gunatmika Maya. Each of them has got the Sattva, Rajas, and Tamo Gunas as its attributes. Each of these elements has got Sattva Guna, Rajo Guna, and Tamo Guna. So now we come to the evolution of the Sukshma Sharira. From these Sukshma Bhutas. So the Sukshma Bhutas have now come. And now we have to talk about the emergence of the Sukshma Shariras from these Sukshma Bhutas. And how does that happen? So we will read the next portion. Etesham Panchatattvanam Madhye
येषां पञ्चतत्त्वानां मध्ये
Akashasya Satvikamshat
आकाशस्य सात्विकांशात्
Shrotrendriyam Sambhutam
श्रोत्रेन्द्रियं सम्भूतं
Vayos Satvikamshat
वायोः सात्विकांशात्
Svagindriyam Sambhutam
त्वगिन्द्रियं सम्भूतम्
Agnes Satvikamshat
अग्नेः सात्विकांशात्
Chakshurindriyam sambhutam.
चक्षुरिन्द्रियं सम्भूतम्
Jalasya satvikamshat.
जलस्य सात्विकांशात्
Rasanendriyam sambhutam.
रसनेन्द्रियं सम्भूतम्
Prithivya satvikamshat.
पृथिव्याः सात्विकांशात्
Ghanendriyam sambhutam.
घ्राणेन्द्रियं सम्भूतम्.
So here it is talking about the evolution of the Sukshma Shariras from the Pancha Sukshma Bhutas. And as we said, the Sukshma Sharira has 17 components that we discussed. Pancha Jnanendriyani, Pancha Karmendriyani, Pancha Pranadayah, Manaschaikam Buddhishchaika, Hemam Saptadashakalabhissaha, Yattishtati Tat Sukshma Shariram. Pancha Jnanendriyani. How did these Pancha Jnanendriyas come about? So as we said, each of these Sukshma Bhutas has got this its distinct attribute. And then each of the Sukshma Bhutas is Trigunatmika, Sattva, Rajas and Tamogunatmika. So now which aspect do we think that which of these three gunas would be involved in the creation of the Jnanendriyas? You have Sattva Guna, Rajoguna, and Tamoguna in each of these five elements. So clearly, it is the Sattva Guna that should result in the production of the Jnanendriyas because Sattva is related to knowledge. So from the Sattva aspect of each of these Panchabhutas, each of these Jnanendriyas emerges. Now the question is, which of these Panchabhutas lead to which of the Indriyas? What we say is that whichever Indriyam emerges from a certain Panchabhuta, that Indriyam is capable of grasping the distinct attribute of that element. So, for example, here it says, Etesham panchatattvanam madhye akashasya satvikamshat shrotrendriyam sambhutam. So, from the sattvika aspect of akashasya satvikamshat shrotrendriyam sambhutam, this shrotrendriya comes about. And what is the function of Shrotrendriya? It is grasping the distinct attribute of Akasha, which is Shabda. Similarly, it says, Vayoho Satvikamshat Tvagendriyam Sambhutam. From the Sattvika aspect of Vayuhu emerges this organ of touch, the Tvagendriyam, whose function is to grasp the distinct attribute of Vayuhu, which is Sparshaha, which is touch. And then Agnehe Satvikamshat Chakshurindriyam Sambhutam. So from the Sattvika aspect of Agnihi emerges the Chakshurindriya, whose job is to grasp the distinct attribute of Agnihi, which is form. And then Jalasya Satvikamshat Rasanendriyam Sambhutam. From the Satvikamsha of Jalaha, from the Satvikamsha of Jalam, is Napunsakalinga, so we should not say Jalaha. Jalam emerges this Rasanendriyam, which has this capability to grasp the distinct attribute of water, which is its taste. And Prithivyaha Satvikamshat Granendriyam Sambhutam. From the Satvikamsha of Prithvi emerges this Granendriyam, whose job is to grasp the distinct attribute of Prithvi, which is its smell. So this is the connection between the Pancha Sukshma Bhutas and the corresponding Jnanendriyas that they give rise to. So in the Sukshma Sharira, we see the emergence of these five Jnanendriyas. Now the next is the emergence of this Antakaranam. So in the definition of the Sukshma Sharira, in the mind, there were two functions that were talked about. Manaschaikam, Buddhischaika. But here, Tattva Bodha adds two more functions. These are just functions of the mind. They, as we said, the same mind, when it in a particular time it acts like the manaha, at another time it acts like the buddhi. So here Tattvabodha adds two more functions called chittam and ahankaraha. Mano buddhi ahankara chittam. So ahankara is the sense of individuality, and chittam is this ability to recollect. So the emergence of this antakarana is talked about next, and we will read that portion. एतेषां पञ्चतत्त्वानां समष्टिसात्विकांशात्
एतेषां पञ्चतत्त्वानां समष्टिसात्विकांशात्
मनोबुद्ध्यहङ्कारचित्तान्तःकरणानि सम्भूतानि
मनोबुद्ध्यहङ्कारचित्तान्तःकरणानि सम्भूतानि
सङ्कल्पविकल्पात्मकं मनः
सङ्कल्पविकल्पात्मकं मनः
निश्चयात्मिका बुद्धिः
निश्चयात्मिका बुद्धिः
अहङ्कर्ता अहङ्कारः
अहङ्कर्ता अहङ्कारः
चिन्तनकर्तृचित्तम्
चिन्तनकर्तृचित्तम्
मनसो देवता चन्द्रमाः
मनसो देवता चन्द्रमाः
बुद्धे ब्रह्मा
बुद्धे ब्रह्मा
अहङ्कारस्य रुद्रः
अहङ्कारस्य रुद्रः
चित्तस्य वासुदेवः
चित्तस्य वासुदेवः
So एतेषां पञ्चतत्त्वानां समष्टिसात्विकांशात् मनोबुद्ध्यहङ्कारचित्तान्तःकरणानि सम्भूतानि. So now, how did this mind emerge from these five subtle elements? We talked about the Gyanendriyas emerging from the sattva aspect of each of the individual five elements. But as we know that the mind is this inner organ that has to coordinate the activities of all of these five Gyanendriyas. The eyes cannot know what the ears are hearing. The ears cannot know what the eyes are seeing. So the eyes report what they are seeing, the ears report what they are hearing, and the touch organ reports what it is touching, and so on. So there has to be an organ that synthesizes all of these inputs and then deliberates and makes a decision. So this organ has to operate behind each of the Gyanendriyas. Each of the Gyanendriya arises from the sattva aspect of their particular element, but the mind has to be there behind all of the Gyanendriyas, and therefore it says samashti satvikamshat mano buddhya hankara chittanta karanani sambhutani samashti satvikamshat. So from the sattvika amsha of each of these panchabhutas, the mind, this internal organ, emerges. Antakarana. Antakaranam emerges. So now it talks about the functions of this antakaranam. So as we said that there are some instruments that can perform more than one function. Like this radio, it can perform only one function of receiving these radio waves and converting it to sound. But then there are these two-in-one players that can perform the function of a radio and a cassette player. Or there are these three-in-one things that can perform the function of a radio and a cassette player and a CD player also. So like that, the mind, this antakaranam is a four-in-one. It performs four functions. And those functions are listed next, which says sankalpa vikalpatmakam manaha. So it has got these four functions of manaha, buddhihi, ahankara, and chittam. Four functions. So manaha is sankalpa vikalpatmakam manaha. When it receives all the inputs from the jnanendriyas, then it deliberates that is it this? Am I seeing this rose? Is that a real rose? No, no, it doesn't look like a real rose. Or maybe it is a real rose. So there is all this deliberation, pros and cons of a particular thing are thought about. And then it swings like a pendulum from one end to the other. Yeah, maybe I should do this. No, maybe I should do that. This is the manaha. This kind of a function is manaha. The same antakaranam is called manaha when it's performing this function of deliberation. Then nischayatmika buddhihi comes next. That after all this deliberation, there's this decision. This decision making faculty of the same antakaranam, when it does that, it is called buddhihi. And then there is ahankaraha, ahankarta ahankaraha. There's this sense of individuality, the sense of limited individuality, this I notion that I am this doer, I have this body mind. So all of this is also there in the mind. This idea is there in the mind. Throughout my life, even though my body is changing, the sense of individuality persists. So this is called ahankara. Ahankarta ahankara, the one who says this I'm a limited individual with this body, limited mind, etc. That is the ahankara. And chintana kartru chittam. So there is this faculty of recollection also. When this antakarana performs this recollection, then it is called chittam. Faculty of memory, basically. Like Swamiji says that there was some person who was being interviewed, and then they asked this person, "What is the secret of your success?" So he said, "The secret of my success are my right decisions, the right decisions that I made in my life." Then they asked him, "What is the secret of your right decisions?" He said, "The secret of my right decisions is my experience. Experience allowed me to make the right decisions." Then they asked him, "What is the secret of your experience?" And he said, "The secret of my experience is the wrong decisions. The wrong decisions that I made that I made me wiser, and those allowed me to make these right decisions." So for this we require a store. All of my experiences, they have to be stored. Samskaras are stored. All of my experiences, good and bad, they result in these samskaras. And those are what gets recollected. So this chittam is the faculty of recollection. With the same instrument, the antakaranam performs these four functions. These are just four functions. That is why Tattva Bodha just adds these functions, two more functions here compared to its definition earlier. It is not that there are two more entities. The entity is one, it performs these four functions. Just like one person, he may be a henpecked husband at home, but the same person may be the judge in a Supreme Court, in the Supreme Court. And the same person may be a president of their local temple and may also be an organizer in some non NGO. So it's the same person who is performing these four functions. Like that, it is the same antakarana that performs these four functions of manaha, buddhihi, chittam, and ahankaraha. So now, Tattvabodha talks about the devatas of the manaha, buddhihi, chittam, and ahankaraha. We talked about this idea of devatas when we were discussing the Sukshma Sharira, where we talked about Shrotrasya dik devata, Tvacho Vayuhu, Chakshusha Suryaha, Rasanayaha Varunaha, and Granasya Ashvinau. So we talked about these devatas of the Jnanendriyas. And we said that these powers that I have, of these capabilities, these capabilities that I have, I am not the author of these capabilities. I have just obtained them. Just like these various apps on the mobile phone, I am not the author of those apps. I have just downloaded them from somewhere. Similarly, all of these abilities that I have, of the Gyanendriya, the Karmendriya, etc., I have just downloaded them from somewhere. So similarly, this capability of manaha, buddhi, chittam, ahankara, etc., I have just obtained them from somewhere, and there is this source that I have obtained them from. Because the laws governing the operation of these faculties, they are all uniform. They are the same in all these jivas. They all have these abilities. Perhaps to a lesser extent in the animals, and perhaps not very visible in the plants, etc. But some rudimentary form of these abilities are there in all beings. So, um, basically, there is the source from which I have obtained all these abilities. And as we said, the entire creation is pervaded by Ishvara. So even the source that governs the functioning of these various abilities, they are also backed by Ishvara. And when we look at Ishvara from the perspective of any given function, then that from the perspective of that limited function, we are calling Ishvara that Devata. So the function of this deliberation, pros and cons, etc., those functions are governed by a certain Devata. Ishvara viewed from the perspective of the function of this deliberation, Sankalpa Vikalpatmakam, Manaha, is called Chandramaha, Chandra Devata. As we say that there is some connection between the Chandra, moon, and the mind also. Because oftentimes we notice that people who have got some mental issues flare up during Amavasya or Purnami. There is some connection there. And other cultures also seem to have understood there is some connection between the moon and the mind. That's why people with mental issues, serious mental issues, they are called lunatics. And there is a word loon comes in, which is connected to lunar. There is some connection between the moon and the mind. And here too we are reaffirming that connection by saying the Devata of the mind is Chandrama. Similarly, Buddhe Brahma. So for Buddhi, the faculty of this decision making, which is concerning knowledge, etc., the Devata is Brahma. And Brahma is married to Saraswati, who is the goddess of knowledge. And similarly, Brahma is presented as having this Chaturmukha, four heads that represent the four Vedas, which, as we have seen, are the source of this knowledge, Apaurusheya knowledge. Therefore, Buddhe Brahma and Ahankarasya Rudraha. This limited individual, the sense of limited individual, as we have seen, is the cause of all this samsara, and the cause of this figuratively we can say the destruction of the human being. And Rudra is the one who is responsible for this destroying this entire creation. He is the lord of destruction. Therefore, ahankarasya rudraha and chittasya vasudevaha. As we have seen, this chittam is the store. It is the one that preserves our experiences. So there is preservation of our experiences involved. And Vishnu is presented as a Lord of sustenance. He sustains this entire creation. Therefore, Chittasya Vasudevaha is the Devata of Chittam. So with this, we have discussed the emergence of the Jnanendriyas and the Mano, Buddhi, Chittam and Ahankaraha. The Jnanendriyas emerge from the Sattva aspect of each of these Panchabhutas, whereas the Mano, Buddhi, Chittam and Ahankara, the Antakaranam, emerges from the Samashti Sattva of all of these Panchabhutas put together. So now we come to the karmendriyas. Those pancha jnanendriyani, pancha karmendriyani, pancha pranadayaha. We have to talk about the karmendriyas and the pranas. How do they emerge? So we will read that portion. एतेषां पञ्चतत्त्वानां मध्ये
एतेषां पञ्चतत्त्वानां मध्ये
आकाशस्य राजसांशात्
आकाशस्य राजसांशात्
वागिन्द्रियं सम्भूतम्
वागिन्द्रियं सम्भूतम्
वायोः राजसांशात्
वायोः राजसांसात्
पाणीन्द्रियं सम्भूतम्
पाणिन्द्रियं सम्भूतम्
वह्नेः राजसांशात्
वह्नेः राजसांशात्
पादेन्द्रियं सम्भूतम्
पादेन्द्रियं सम्भूतम्
जलस्य राजसांशात्
जलस्य राजसांशात्
उपस्थेन्द्रियं सम्भूतम्
उपस्थेन्द्रियं सम्भूतम्
पृथिव्या राजसांशात्
पृथिव्यां राजसांशात्
गुदेन्द्रियं सम्भूतम्
उदेन्द्रियं सम्भूतम्
एतेषां समष्टिराजसांशात्
एतेषां समष्टिराजसांशात्
पञ्चप्राणाः सम्भूताः
पञ्चप्राणाः सम्भूताः.
Now, Tattva Bodha is talking about the emergence of the Pancha Karmendriyas, how the Pancha Karmendriyas emerge. So it says, Etesham Panchatattvanam Madhye Akashasya Rajasamshat Vagindriyam Sambhutam. So from the Rajas Amsha of Akasha, the Vag Indriyam comes about. As we saw from the Sattvika Amsha of Akasha, the Shrotrendriyam came about, the power to know. And from the Rajasamsha of Akasha, the Vagindriyam, the power, this organ of speaking comes about. The organ of speech. Both are related to sound. One is the knower of sound, the other is the producer of sound. And then from Vayoho Rajasamshat Panidriyam Sambhutam, from the Rajas aspect of the subtle Vayu emerges this Pani Indriyam, this power to grasp, this power to handle objects. When we are talking about this Indriyam, we should remember it's a part of the Sukshma Shariram, not this Golakam that is a part of the Sthula Sharira. Rajas of Vayu, we get the Pani Indriyam, this power to grasp and handle objects. And as we have seen, this Vayuhu is the Devata of Bala also, strength. Because if we see in the Puranas, we talk about Hanuman and Bhima being Vayuputras. They're presented as being extremely strong. They can uproot trees. That strength comes from the Rajas of Vayu, their parent. And from the Rajas of Agnihi, Padendriyam Sambhutam, this subtle organ of locomotion that we have, that arises from the Rajas Amsha of Agnihi. Wherever we see locomotion in the world, there is always some Agnihi involved. For example, these steam engines, they work on Agnihi. They work on, basically, if we see cars, there's the spark plugs. They produce some combustion. Or aeroplanes, they have fuel and somewhere the fuel is burnt. Any locomotion involves rajas of Agnihi. Similarly, our locomotion also involves this rajas of Agnihi. And similarly, rajas of Jalam. It says, Jalasya rajasamshat upasthendriyam sambhutam. From the rajas amsha of Jalam arises this organ of reproduction. Upastha indriyam. And Prithivyaha Rajasamshat Gudendriyam Sambhutam, from this Rajas aspect of Prithvi arises this organ of evacuation. It's called Gudendriya here. So this explains the rise of the Pancha Karmendriyas from the Pancha Bhutas. And then he says, Etesham Samashti Rajasamshat Pancha Pranaha Sambhuta. From the Samashti Rajas, the 5 pranas arise. Because as we have seen, the pranas have to operate behind the Karmendriyas. Pranas are the ones that give energy to the Karmendriyas to operate. Therefore, these Pancha Pranas arise from the Samashti Rajas of all of these Pancha Bhutas. So with this, we have completed the Pancha Jnanendriyani, Pancha Karmendriyani, Pancha Pranadaya. And Mano Buddhi Ahankara Chittam called Antakaranam. So this explains the rise of the Sukshma Sharira from the Sukshma Bhutas. So now we have to explain the arising of these gross elements from the Pancha Sukshma Bhutas. So we will read that part next. Etesham Panchatattvanam Tamasamshat
Etesham Panchatattvanam Tamasanshat
Panchīkrita Panchatattvani Bhavanti
Panchīkrita Panchatattvani Bhavanti
Panchīkaranam Kathamiti Chet
Panchīkaranam Katamiti Chet
Etesham Panchamahabhutanam
Etesham Panchamahabhutanam
Tamasamshaswarupam Ekamekam Bhutam
Tamasamshasvarupam Ekamekam Bhutam
Dvidha Vibhajya
Vidha Vibhajya
Ekamekamardham Prithak Tushnim Vyavasthapya
Ekamekamardham Prithak Tushnim Vyavasthapya
Aparamaparamartham Chaturdham Vibhajya
Aparamaparamartham Chaturdham Vibhajya
Swadhamanyeshu Ardheshu
Swadhamanyeshu Ardheshu
Swabhagachatustaya Sanyojanam Karyam
Svabhagachattushtaya Sanyojanam Karyam
Tada Panchikaranam Bhavati
Tada Panchikaranam Bhavati
Etebhyah Panchikrita Panchamahabhutebhyah
Etebhyah Panchīkrita Panchamahabhutebhyah
Stula Shariram Bhavati
Sthula Shariram Bhavati
Evam Pinda Brahmandayoraikyam Sambhutam.
Evam Pinda Brahmandayoraikyam Sambhutam.
So here it's explaining how the the 5 gross elements, the Pancha Sthula Bhutas emerge from the Pancha Sukshma Bhutas. And this process is called Panchikaranam. So Etesham Panchatattvanam Tamasamshat Panchikrita Panchatattwani Bhavanti. So from the Tamasamsha, so you've discussed production of Jnanendriyas from Sattvamsha of the Panchabhutas. We discussed the production of the Karmendriyas and Pranas from this Rajas aspect of the Panchabhutas. So now he's talking about how these gross 5 elements are created from the Pancha Sukshma Bhutas, from the Tamasa aspect of the Pancha Sukshma Bhutas. So etesham panchatattvanam tamasamshat panchikrita panchatattvani bhavanti. These 5 grossified elements are created from the tamasamsha of the 5 sukshma bhutas. So what is Panchikaranam, he asks. You use the word Panchikrita Panchatatvani Bhavanti. You use the words grossified five elements. What is the means of this grossification? Panchikaranam Katham iti chet, he asks. What is Panchikaranam? So he says, Etesham Panchamahabhutanam Tamasamsha Swarupam Ekam Ekam Bhutam Dvidha Vibhajya. So we take each of these five subtle elements, the tamas amsha of each of these five subtle elements, and that gets divided into two. The subtle element gets divided into two. So if you take subtle akasha, the tamas amsha of subtle akasha, it is divided into two. And then one half remains as it is. So dvidha vibhajya ekam ekam ardham prithak tushnim vyavasthapya. So from these five elements that are divided into two, one half is set aside in each element. So there is the pure Pancha Mahabhuta, pure Akasha, pure Agni, pure Vayuhu, pure Jalam, pure Prithvi. Tamasamsha of that is divided into two, one half is placed as it is. And aparam ardham chaturdham vibhajya. So the second half is further divided into four. So second half of each element, each is divided into four. So you have the second half of Akasha that is divided into four, the second half of Vayuhu that is divided into four, the second half of Jalam that is divided into four, and so on. And then what happens is Chaturdham Vibhajya Swadham Anyeshu Ardheshu Swabhaga Chatushtaya Sanyojanam Karyam. So what happens is that this one fourth of that second half then unites with each of the other four elements, basically. So you have four parts of the second half of each element that unites with the other four elements. So one half of the original element was set aside, and then you get one fourth of each of the other four elements into it. So if you finally look at what happens, there is Agnihi, or you take Akasha, that is divided into two. So you have half of pure Akasha, and then you get one fourth of Vayuhu, one fourth of Agnihi, one fourth of Jalam, and one fourth of Prithvi. So if we look at the grossified Akasha, it contains one half pure Akasha, one fourth Vayuhu, one fourth Agnihi, one fourth Jalam, and one fourth Prithvi. If you look at the subtle Vayuhu, that was divided into two. And then half of that subtle Vayuhu unites with one fourth Akasha, one fourth Agnihi, one fourth Jalam, and one fourth Prithvi, obtained from the second half of each of the other four elements. So in effect, it is one eighth of the other element that comes in here. So that the grossified Akasha is half pure Akasha plus one eighth Vayuhu, one eighth Agnihi, one eighth Jalam, and one eighth Prithvi. So four 1/8s make one half, and plus the other half, it makes one full grossified element. So this process is called Panchikaranam. And by this Panchikaranam, each element now becomes a mixture. It is no longer the pure subtle element. The pure subtle element plus 1/8 of each of the other four elements. So this is called the Panchikrita Bhuta, or the grossified element, basically. So now we have grossified Akasha, grossified Vayuhu, grossified Agnihi, grossified Jalam, and grossified Prithvi. So this is how the gross elements originate from the subtle elements. And this, now he says, etebhyah panchikrita panchamahadbhutebhyah sthula shariram bhavati. So this sthula shariram then arises from these grossified five elements. And when he says sthula shariram bhavati, we should extend it to the grossified world also. This gross world that we see around us, which is primarily tamasic, is also originated from the from this Panchikaranam procedure, from the Pancha Sukshma Bhutas. The Pancha Sukshma Bhutas give rise to the Pancha Sthula Bhutas that give rise to this gross body and the gross world. So we discussed these four types of creation: the creation of the Sukshma Bhutas, and the creation of the Sukshma Sharira from the Sukshma Bhutas, and the creation of the Sthula Bhutas, and the creation of these bodies, Sthula Sharira and the Sthula Jagat from these Sthula Pancha Mahabhutas. So we covered these four types of creation. And now, what is this? There is so much detail given here. So, what are we to take home from this? What is the essence of what Vedanta is trying to tell us through this entire procedure of how this plurality comes about? The first is that there is some equivalence of how this individual arises from the Karana Shariram, and how this entire gross world arises from the Karana Prapancha or Maya. Because both, from the Karana Avastha, in both, there is production of the Sukshma first, and then there is a production of the Sthula. So the Sukshma Sharira comes first, and then the Sthula Shariras and the Sthula objects, etc., they come about. Both in case of the individual as well as in case of the total. So we can see three pairs here. Three pairs are involved. There's a Karana Sharira of the individual and the Karana Prapancha called Maya when it comes to the total. And then there is the Sukshma Sharira of the individual, and there is also the Sukshma Prapancha, which contains the composite Sukshma Sharira of all the beings. And then there is this Sthula Sharira of the individual that comes about, and then there is this composite Sthula Sharira of all the beings and this entire lokas that are there. So there are these three pairs that we have. But all of these three pairs are inert, they're material. And behind all of these three pairs, we have this consciousness of Brahman that lends existence as well as consciousness to these three pairs. There is one consciousness, one existence. So one limitless consciousness existence called Brahman is behind the three pairs. And all of these three pairs, whether it be the Sukshma Shariras or the Sthula Shariras, or even the Karana Prapancha, the Karana Shariras, all of these are non-separate from Brahman. They have no separate existence other than Brahman. Just as the ornaments are non-separate from gold. They have no independent existence apart from Brahman. So it is Brahman alone that really exists in all of this. So if we look at the example that there is just cotton that exists, and from cotton comes this sukshma fibers. And these sukshma fibers that get converted into yarn. And from this yarn, the fabric emerges. And from the fabric, the various dresses emerge. So similarly, we can say from cotton, these sukshma fibers emerge. And from the sukshma fibers, this yarn emerges. And from this yarn, the fabric emerges. From this fabric, all of these dresses, varieties of dresses emerge. What is the reality in all of this? It is cotton all the way. All of these are just nama rupas of cotton. So similarly here, from Brahman, backed by Maya, the Akasha emerges. Sukshma Akasha, from Sukshma Akasha, Sukshma Vayuhu, from Sukshma Vayuhu, Sukshma Agnihi, from Sukshma Agnihi, Sukshma Jalam, from Sukshma Jalam, Sukshma Prithvi. And then there is creation of the Sukshma Sharira that is putting together all of these Sukshma Bhutas. And then the creation of the Sthula Sharira, Sthula Bhutas from the Sukshma Bhutas, and the creation of the Sthula Jagat from the Sthula Bhutas. So behind all of this, there is one reality, that is Brahman. The Brahman, all the way, all of this don't have any independent existence apart from Brahman. One Satyam Brahman plus any number of Mithya Nama Rupas, starting from Maya to the manifestations of Maya. One Brahman plus any number of Mithya Nama Rupas, they are all one Brahman, one Satyam Brahman. This is the only way the one can become many. One has to, as though, become many. There is no real plurality here at all. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadhaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Hari Om